No, there's a lot of sharing that goes on, and we're constantly looking at new technologies and sharing and experimenting. I'm thinking one of the things I'm doing on the systems side is we've been working on a design tool that plumbers or builders could use to take a look at pipe run lengths and so forth and look at alternatives to address the issue that Doug and Ken talked about in terms of how can we minimize water wasted waiting for hot water, which is, if you do it right, it's kind of a freebie in terms of the conservation. It doesn't restrict what somebody's doing in terms of what comes out of their shower head or their tap. So we're working on a tool and looking to roll that out later this year, and that would help because I think education is a big part of the new construction challenge that we have. How do we lay out homes? How do we get the water heater and the pipe runs shorter? Those kinds of things, which you can do, as we've talked about, at lower cost. And I think the other thing, which is paramount in my mind, in our company's mind, is we've got to make products that when they go into homes, that they work for people, that the consumers are satisfied with them. And I think in the long run, that's a significant challenge. And as Doug, I think, quite adequately described, behavior is a huge component of how much water is used. I've looked at the AWWA's residential end uses of water study back from the late 90s, and they're doing another one, but that reports and all the other reports I've seen show huge variation house to house, family to family in terms of water use. So, as David Freeman mentioned, water rates may be one thing that can help encourage people to make better choices in terms of their behavior. But I think education is also a huge objective. So we would look forward to the opportunity to partner with water utilities and so forth to help the consumer education piece of it. Because I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there so that when people have a gray water system, they don't end up using more water so they can make their lawn greener. And I think probably the last thing in terms of behavior, which has to do with where I think manufacturers need to go and plumbing system designers and builders need to go. And it kind of relates to one of my favorite Lily Tomlin one-liners of, did you hear about the laboratory mice that changed the behavior of laboratory technicians by refusing to take food pellets? So, if we think about behavior, that's kind of a reverse thing, but I think one of the things that we need to do is develop plumbing systems that will cause behavior change in the people using the homes and living in the homes, because that behavior results in higher satisfaction and more water saved. And I think for all of us, that's the biggest challenge in the long run.
And in terms of some of the technology, do you see a lot of room to run in terms of developing more technology that, the WaterSense levels of performance now and consumption, are those going to drop, and are manufacturers going to be pushing technology even farther? How is that relationship going to exist?
I don't know. I think that's something, again, we have to be talking to the consumers to find out what's the lower limit. Mm-hmm. And in the feedback they give us, they may lead us to some newer technologies where we can reduce water consumption further. But we also have to be real sensitive that if we start giving them products and putting requirements in that don't give them enough water to be satisfied with the use they're putting it to, then I think they're going to find a way to defeat it.
Right, for sure.
And it's really not just at the consumer level. We also have to worry about the municipal systems that ultimately collect all that waste. So I know that's become an issue in some water-scarce regions. They're having difficulty with conveyance in the wastewater lines. They've simply de-watered the sewer lines, and obviously we still produce the same amount of waste, or maybe even more, than we ever have, and there's just not enough water to get it there, and it's changing the dynamics of operating a wastewater treatment plant. So we need to look at it really on every scale. I think sometimes people get fixated on one end of the process and forget about the bigger implications.
Yeah, I think probably just one other comment I'd make is that a lot of what we're doing going forward tends to be very focused on new construction. And certainly from what Jim Hanlon said, there's going to be a lot of new construction over the next 40 years to serve a significantly growing population. But right today, we have 130 million residential units that need to be retrofitted
Right.
in an effective way. And I think that's another big challenge for us as manufacturers and installers.
So Stephanie, back to the WaterSense program. Could you walk us through the WaterSense home certification and what that entails?
The home certification is sort of based on the same principle as the product certification. I mean, I think we want to see third-party independent certification for homes as well as products. So at the time when we set up the new homes program, the same exact kind of system didn't sort of exist. So we tried to use, basically borrow from the system that our partner program, the Energy Star program, uses for certifying their homes for WaterSense. So we have, a group of program administrators that look at WaterSense, that look at providers, and WaterSense, basically these group of people called providers, basically provide the inspectors that go out and look at the WaterSense home once it's built. So any home that ends up with the WaterSense label has been inspected by a third party to make sure that it meets all of the criteria for the WaterSense system. The WaterSense new home specification is really a pass-fail system. There's no point systems for getting more efficiency. The goal is to have something that was simple for jurisdictions to implement, or for other agencies or organizations to sort of put into their existing homes programs. It was also designed to fit in with the Energy Star new homes program and not really overlap it in any way, so that there wouldn't be sort of conflicting requirements. And then, as we've talked about, there's a lot of focus on the water use outside of a home. And so the WaterSense New Homes program has a whole set of outdoor requirements. If you have an installed irrigation system, there's an additional set of requirements, but you don't have to have an irrigation system to be a WaterSense labeled home. We would prefer that you design the system to be design the landscape to use less water generally. But if you do install an irrigation system, then that is an additional audit that the house has to go through, and they have to have an additional auditor come out and look at just the irrigation system to make sure that it meets the requirements.
Thank you. So let's talk, Doug. Let's talk about the landscape and irrigation use in a residential home. Your program doesn't allow for, or it has some restrictions, right, in terms of turf and plantings, and could you kind of describe that, and how has that become the norm? Are people, home buyers, accepting that as their dream home site?